Today, like I said, we're going to start talking about family this morning. But what I wanted to do as I was preparing for this, the first thing that I wanted to talk through was how this is such a scriptural topic. It is a very, very biblical idea, this thing of family. When you look to Scripture, family is talked about all through Scripture. And then especially in the Old Testament, it was your physical family was very, very important. For a woman not to be able to have kids was a tragic thing in that day and age because family was so important. For parents who didn't have a boy, it was such a tragedy not to be able to carry on the family name. All these things in the Old Testament were very, very important back then. But then as you get to the New Testament, you see kind of a transfer. A transfer, I guess that's the best word I can think of right now. But thank you, transition is what I'm thinking of. You see this transition as you get to the New Testament, and it's less emphasis on the physical family and a whole lot of emphasis on the spiritual family, on the church family. And so this is a very scriptural, very biblical idea. So I thought the best way to start this lesson is let's just open up and let's read some scripture about the importance of family and the power of family. So look at Hebrews chapter 10. We're going to read through several scriptures. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to turn to each one, but once I get there in my Bible, I'm going to start reading because I have several that I want us to look at this morning. And if this is a little fast for you, it probably won't be. I'm not great at flipping to the so you're probably there before me. But if you can write these down for reference later. Hebrews chapter 10, verses 24 and 25. And let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds. Let us not give up, other versions say neglect, meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but let us encourage one another all the more as you see the day approaching. Romans chapter 12, verses 10 through 13. Romans chapter 12, verses 10 through 13. It says, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Matthew chapter 12, verses 49 and 50. Pointing to his disciples, he said, I love this. This is Jesus talking. And pointing out to his disciples, he said, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19. Consequently, you are no longer foreigners and aliens, but your fellow citizens with God's people and you're members of God's household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets with Jesus Christ himself as the chief cornerstone. And finally, the scripture we read earlier, Acts chapter 2. And let's read it again, starting in verse 42. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer, and everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes. They ate together with glad and sincere hearts. They were praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. The power of family, especially church family when you're looking to the New Testament, is a very biblical thing. And so what we're talking about this morning is something that God not only wants for us, but he commands us that we be together, that we lift one another up. And so church family is a very, very important thing. But one of the questions, the reason I wanted to start with the fact that this is a scriptural topic is because one of the questions that we tend to ask is this, and you'll hear it a lot these days, because a lot of the millennial generation today a lot of my generation today is attacking religion. In other words, it's all about Jesus, not about organized religion. You don't have to go to church to be a Christian. Christianity is so much more than a building, and it's so much more than a church, and it's almost this push to say, let's get rid of church and Christianity. And we ask that kind of a question in a lot of different ways, but typically it's asked, do I have to go to church to be a Christian? Here's my challenge. Because some of you may be sitting there and thinking the same thing. You may have had this debate with your kids. You may have talked about it with other people. You may have asked this same question because it's not that it's a bad question. I just think it's a shallow question. I've asked the question before, so I can say that. and I think it's a moment, an opportunity for us as we answer that question to develop our faith further, because I don't think it's a good question. I think it's a shallow question. Do I have to do this in order to be a Christian? Fill in the blank with anything. Whether it's go to church, what about, and whether or not these things are sin, you'll hear these questions. You've had these debates. Is drinking alcohol a sin or not? And some people have one opinion and some people have another opinion, and they'll get into a scriptural debate. I've had people who have challenged the fact that is using language a sin? I'm not going to get into how that one played out or how that came about, but there's these different things. And the question that people will ask is it a sin if I do these things? I'm going to challenge us because I don't think Jesus was asking those kinds of questions. And I think when we're asking those questions, I think we're trying to find exactly where's the line that Jesus said don't cross so that I can get right up to it and be as close to it as I can. And what Jesus is saying is follow me. Right? He's not saying find the line and see if this is okay or not. In other words, when we ask those questions, we're trying to justify something that we're doing 90% of the time. I'm trying to justify that why I'm not going to church. Well, because I don't need church to have Jesus. It may be true that you don't need to come to a worship service in order to have Jesus. You may be right. But that is a very shallow question. And I would ask, why are you asking that in the first place? And is there not better questions? You remember the old wristbands that would come out? It was a big thing, big movement. Chris, you're like, yeah, I got you. The what would Jesus do movement, you know? And I thought that was a very good question. I thought, and I know it was really blown up for a while, and usually when things get way blown up, they drop way off. But I thought, you know what? That was an awesome movement. It's a great question to ask as I'm approaching anything in life. What would Jesus do? That's a deep question. The shallow question is it a sin if I do this or don't do this? And so we want to address that this morning. And listen, here's the thing. When you're reading these scriptures that we just read, why would you not want to be a part of something like that? I think that's a good question. Why would you not want to be able to be involved with a family that loves, that gives, that serves, that protects? What I love, my glasses. When I don't have my glasses on, I can't see anything. I'm very nearsighted. Avery makes fun of me because at night when I'm on the side, I know I look really weird. At night, whenever I can't, I can see shapes, but I could not tell you anyone right now. I can't read, that thing. I'm very blind. And so my glasses help give me the focus that I need to see straight, right? That's a part of what church family does. Is it a sin not to be a part of a church family? Okay, let's move to the next question. Being a part of a church family will help your focus. It will help keep you where you need to be. And so that's the question I want to address. I know you've been begging to know why I brought my unicycle up here, and it's because no, I'm kidding. No. I called Josh. Josh, thank you for helping me out here with this, wherever you are. I called Josh and I said, Josh, I know that you are a man who collects a lot of junk. And he said, no, I collect treasures. And I said, okay, well, through some of your treasures, and I knew, this is the guy to call. I said, do you happen to have a bicycle wheel that I could use? And he said, are we talking a kid's bike or an adult's bike? What color? What do you need? And so I tell him, we go in back and forth to what I need. And then he gets to the end and he says, as we're wrapping up, he says, now, let me ask you this. Are you going to use this in the pulpit on Sunday morning? And I said, yeah. He said, well, then I've got 4 of them. I guess it was the idea that he really needs his get into heaven free ticket or something. I'm not sure. But he was really excited. Thanks for being a good sport, Josh, and helping me out here. I appreciate that, man. I see you back there. Listen, I was thinking about family, and this is what comes to my mind as I think about family is a wheel. I'm a visual learner a lot of times, and so it helps me to see something like this. So next time you're on the street and you see somebody riding their bike, hopefully you'll think about family. What I like about this is that there's several different parts to a wheel, and they're all very important, right? First, you've got, what is this called? Well, this centerpiece, it's the hub. It's the hub. And it's right in the center. And if you take the hub and you moved it up here, what do you think is going to happen? Right? Your ride's not going to be very smooth. It's not going to get you exactly where you need to go. You may be able to still get places, but it's not going to be smooth and it's not going to be where you want. Right? Having the hub at the center makes all the difference. And the scripture that we just read about the power of family, I loved it. That's why I was very intentional with reading that scripture. It said that Jesus Christ himself is the chief what? He's the hub. Jesus, God is our hub. And the ride of life, stick with my metaphor for me, only succeeds when God is at the center. You may still get places you want to go, but when your priorities are out of line and you've put other things in the center, you're not going to get where you want to go. The ride's not going to be smooth. It's not going to work as well as it should. And so God represents the hub in family. What are these called? Spokes. And so you've got these different spokes. And let me get my hands out from being stuck there. These spokes represent us. Okay? And so I think about God, I think about us as I look at this wheel, and there's all these different spokes on there. And what's interesting about the spokes is that they're attached to what? They're attached to the hub. And when they're attached to the hub, it gives them the tension that they need to help the ride go smooth. When one of these spokes breaks, I don't know, how many bike riders do we have in here? All right, wow, several. Wow, way to go. Keep it up. Cody, are you in here? Cody Bonner, I know he was here somewhere. He may be down helping out at the other end. But Cody, I think about him all the time because he loves to ride his bike. We were talking about that this morning. And when one of your spokes breaks, how's the ride? Man, it's bad. And if you don't fix one of the broken spokes quickly, then you'll mess up your entire wheel, your whole ride will be destroyed, you'll just mess everything up. You need to hurry, and when you have a broken spoke, you need to fix it because it'll mess up your wheel, get it out of line, and it'll start to shake, and it will also be rough, and you won't ride as smooth as you need to. And listen, here's what I believe about church family. And this is a perfect illustration for me because as I think about this, when someone in our family is broken or hurting or not where they should be, it takes all the others to stop and to say, wait a second, we've got to help them. We've got to get them back aligned with who? Back to the hub. We've got to get them back connected to God. That only happens in family. Now, do you need other spokes in order for you yourself to be connected to God? No, there's a lot of people in Scripture. You think about Hosea, and God tells him to marry someone of the world who is living a life against God out in prostitution because there's no other godly people around. So is it possible for you to have faith by yourself when others around you aren't? Absolutely. This is where this debate comes in. There's that question we ask. Do I have to go to church to be a Christian? Well, do I have to be a part of something like what's happening here this morning in order to be saved? Can I not have faith on my own? Sure. But I think that's a shallow question. Because God has, listen, if it was only about you, if it was only about your faith, because see, that question is very self-centered, right? It didn't ask anything about anybody else. What about other spokes? What about other family members who need you to help them be restored? What happens when somebody else is hurting, right? That question is, am I saved? if I'm not a part of a church family? It's a very self-centered question. A much better question is, how can I help get someone else connected to the hub? And how can I better stay involved in relationship? There's one thing that you'll notice, and it doesn't work as well on this one, but for most bicycle wheels, you'll understand what I'm saying, and you'll be able to see it yourself. Most of the time, the space between spokes is at its most, the distance between each one of these here is at its most when it's closer to the tire, which means it's away from where? And so as these get closer, and this is where you can see it, as the spokes are getting closer to the hub, they get so close on this particular bike that they intersect with one another. I love that. I didn't see the one, whenever I asked Josh, I wasn't thinking that, but this makes it even better because they intersect with one another. Those relationships collide as they get closer to the hub. But as we distance ourselves from God, we distance ourselves from one another. And so many times you may have heard this idea, man, I'm getting stuff all over me. Many times you may have heard this idea, and we usually present it like this. As you get closer to God, your relationships will get better. That's a big thing for understand. Listen, if you're in a marriage and it's struggling and you're having a hard time, when's the last time you prayed out loud with your spouse? When's the last time you just focused as intensely as you could, not necessarily on trying to just repair the relationship, but repairing your spiritual life with God? In a broken relationship, the best solution to bringing you closer together with your spouse or the one that you're wounded with is to get each other closer to the hub. Because as we approach the hub, we get closer to each other. But I also think it's true to say it in reverse. It's the same thing, but I believe it's true that as we get closer to one another, we get closer to God. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's not a way that we've thought about before. And yes, you can still get close to God when you're the only one, but it sure is a lot more difficult to be the only one. And it makes a whole world of difference when you have family. Family is preached over and over again in Scripture. That's why I wanted to start with all the Scripture instead of just spreading it out throughout the lesson, is because I wanted to make clear at the beginning that if we invest in family, we are investing in our relationship to God. Because family promotes each other to be closer to God. When you think about times, like I think about highlights in my faith. I want you to think about that too for a second. Some of you are still, I can tell, you're still thinking. You're like, I don't know if that's true. And that's okay. I'm wanting to cause new thinking this morning. I think about spiritual highs. I think about those moments where I was really close to the Lord, and usually it was with somebody else. Somebody else was there. I think about spiritual highs in my life. I think about when I was at camp, camps growing up, and youth camps. And when I was surrounded by other people in a cabin for a week out, my faith grew. Why? Well, because I was in tune with God, but I was also connected with spiritual people in a cabin who were with me. Why are there so many people who are invested in higher ground? Because relationships are promoting you to be attached to the hub more closely. I mean, because there's a lot that's going on there. Why are we promoting Connect Group this Sunday? There's some of you who are sitting there and you're saying, I've been a member of the church my whole life and I never needed Connect Group before. We didn't grow up with Connect Group. Why do we preach Connect Group so hard? I don't need Connect Group to be saved. I'm going to challenge that thinking. I've been there before, especially when I first heard of a small group thing. I was there. That was the question I was asking. We never needed it before. Why do we need this now? We can just be a family like we always have been. Look, we're growing here at Leander. I don't know if you've noticed that. And it's a very healthy growth because we're not just boom and all of a sudden there's 100 people one Sunday. This is a slow, gradual growth. But if you look at where we were as about a year ago to where we are now, I've seen growth already. And I'm talking numerical growth here in our congregation. I've also seen spiritual growth, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. As there's more people, it is just true that it is more difficult to connect on a deep level. That is why in Acts chapter 2, yes, they met in the temple courts. And by the way, they were meeting in the temple courts. How often? Daily. That's what they would do. What we're doing this morning was a part of a daily routine for them. But there was also another daily meeting that would happen. And what was that? They're sharing meals in their homes, breaking bread with each other. They're over at each other's house. Why? Because that's where relationships are formed. You think it's by accident that the church was just growing as fast as it was. Day by day, people were being saved and added to the Lord's number? You think that's by accident? I don't. I think it's because relationships with each other were growing as they all pursued God. Now, if I just go out and I have a relationship or a friendship or whatever with somebody who's in the world and isn't a Christian, it's not the same. I'm talking church family. This is what this wheel represents, is our church family as we're connected with God and we help propel one another. I think about times in my life where I'm broken, and there's been several. I think about my journey at Sunset, which was a whole lot of up and downs, and I felt like my whole ride was like this, and it was just out of control for me. And yet there was faculty there who have been instilled in the Lord for so long. And as I was at my lowest point, which is when my fiance left me, and then there was some other things going on in my family that were tough, and I was a broken little kid, it was those other men and women who were a part of my journey in Lubbock, as my family wasn't even there with me, who supported me and uplifted me and kept me on the right track. Family brings focus. It brings new priorities. It keeps the hub at the center. That's what family's all about. And I'm not talking physical family. I'm talking church family. There's something special. I don't know if you've experienced this in your Connect group yet, but there's something special when your whole group has this light bulb kind of a moment in the faith. And you all just get really excited, and this new idea comes up, and y'all say, we say as a group, you know what, we could do that. And you have a new mission, you have a new idea, and it's outward focused. Man, there's just something special about that, and it bonds you. No, you don't have to be an attendant of a Connect group to have faith. But again, I think let's ask different questions. Let's ask different questions, deeper questions. Why wouldn't I want to be a part of something like that? I've got so many things I could talk about. I need to finish up here. I've got so many things that I could talk about with family, with faith, with spiritual family, times where my family's been broken or been hurting, or times, this is also one of the best things, and it's hard to experience it on Sunday morning. Look, I love all of you, and I love our conversations as we talk in here. And a lot of times I'm here and you are too, and people aren't out of this building until like 1:30 on a Sunday morning because we love to be together. This is a very family-oriented church, and that's something I love. But there is, you have a birthday or an anniversary, and the elder of the month will probably come up and we'll mention you and we'll applaud and we'll clap. And we're very excited because we love family. That's an exciting thing. I love that we get to do that. But there's just a different feel when you walk into your Connect group and you say, it's my birthday, right? Or it's my anniversary. There's a different feel as you talk about it, you experience it, you open it up. It's just a different experience. One of the youth kids, it's your birthday. Youth kids, I'm sorry. You guys are turning into young men and women. You're not just kids anymore. But it's your birthday. You walk into a church service and they announce it from the pulpit. That's awesome. It's fun. It was exciting. But there's a whole different feel when you get to walk into the brick house with the people that you love, the people that you see, the people that know you the most, and you have that same experience. There's just things that happen at Connect Group, listen, that cannot happen in a service. If you hadn't heard anything else, hear that. There's also things that happen in a service that cannot happen in a Connect Group. Both are true. Both are valuable. Both are important for our health and our spiritual life. Get involved. If you haven't been, you're missing out. You're missing out. And don't just go one Sunday and say, well, I've been there. I saw what that was about. I didn't get anything out of it. No. Family isn't a one-time thing. It's a lifetime thing. It's a commitment to say, I'm here. I'm with you. I'm all in. That's what Connect Group's all about. Listen, here's what I was thinking, and I'm going to close with this. Of all the things in the world, since creation, the beginning of time, everything that we invest in is going to pass away. Everything. I mean, look, investing's important, right? Investing, saving for retirement. You want to make sure your kids are taken care of. You want to make sure that they're ready for retirement, for college, whatever it is. Investing's important. But all that's going to pass away. And yet we spend so much time saying, no, you got to invest. You got to take care of this. You got to be on top of this. But of all the things since creation, the only thing that will last for eternity is our spiritual family. That's the only thing. It's the relationships that we form. Everything else that we have, everything else we're a part of will pass away, but this will remain. When you go to a connect group, you're not just going to check off the box and say, well, now I'm saved because I was a part of something. You're investing in your eternity. You're investing in the only thing that matters. When you have that experience, and listen, Connect Group is a place where you can share the things that are going on in your life. Yes, you have a Devo and you have those moments, but there's something special about getting your feet underneath a table and sharing a meal with somebody else. That's why it's significant that they were breaking bread in their homes. I don't think that the first century church was growing by accident. I think they grew because they were intentional about each other, about their relationships with one another. And those relationships weren't just, oh, let's just get together and do this. It was intentional of keeping God at the center. That's why this fellowship, this worship service is so important, because this is a place where we encourage one another and we're investing in something eternal. What you have done this morning is invest in your eternity. Well done. Everybody give yourself a pat on the back. You did it. But the same thing is true every day when you're involved in a connect group, or you're coming up to help serve in a pantry. It's not just connect groups. That's just the best way that we have come up with as of right now to help 300 people find others where they can share deep things with one another. It's not always the best place at a service to share what's going on, but a connect group is a safe place, a comfortable place. And I can tell you some stories of the past of been a part of at other churches and other places that have made a difference. And I'll tell you what, last week at our Connect group, at the Christmas party, Nick, I'm telling you, Ricky, the moment that we were able to share through there, there's something special that happens in Connect group that you can't find anywhere else. That's why it's important. And there's also, by the way, a lot of fun to be had in places like that. Memories to be made, laughter to be shared. I think about the Christmas party, and I don't know what happened, but when Josh said that joke, and Terry Sue got it, and Ezra got it, and those of you who are in that Connect group, you know what's going on there. We have no idea, but the joy that was shared between that group in this inside kind of a joke, just because they spent time together, man, it makes a difference. It's about sharing highs and lows with my family. I want to be a part of a family who I can experience the highs and lows of life with, and walk life with, share life with, and speak truth to help keep my focus. And that happens at a church service, but it also happens out through the rest of the week. And that's why we're promoting Connect groups this morning. I love you. I don't know what you're going through, but I know that you need somebody. That's a part of life. That's the way God designed it. God did not design us to be alone. When he saw Adam's loneliness, he said, this is not good. Of all the things that were good, he said, this is not good. And that's why he created Eve. He created other spokes so that we could be together. And so if you are struggling with something this morning and you've never opened up about it before, you're not alone. And we're here for you as a family. And that's the way God designed it. And so we've got a time right now that we're about to stand and we're going to sing. And this is a moment where you can walk down the aisle and come down here and just, if you want to share every detail, that's great too. Or if you just need prayers and whatever you need, this is a moment where you can come down the aisle, tell us, and have our elders, our staff, but more importantly, our entire church family pray for you. We're in this together. Everybody say that. We're in this together. That's what church family is all about. If there's anything we can do, once you come, while together we stand and sing.